Well, the haters gonna hate, 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 and the fakers gonna fake, 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 baby. I'm just gonna making luck, a Dominion podcast. Yeah, at least I got to watch the episode. It was really sad though, because like I didn't actually know half the things that happened.
Because you weren't fully awake?
No, because it was too dark.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah. And also, like, it wasn't clear when someone was alive or dead.
Is it ever?
It usually is, yeah.
Welcome to Making Luck, a lighting podcast. My name is Not Wandering Winder. Joining me, as usual, it's Adam Horton. Adam, what's going on?
Hey, I was just sitting here in front of the computer having a chat with my brah, or not Wandering Winder, sorry.
Well, you can call me Wandering Winder, it's just not my name.
Oh, really? I can call you that?
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's not my name, though. Like, it's just, like, my internet handle.
Oh, okay.
Right.
What would you prefer I call you?
You can call me Wandering Winder. That's a fine thing to call me. It's just not my name.
Hot. Okay.
My name is not Wandering Winder. It's
Okay.
my internet handle. You may call me Wandering Winder. It is acceptable.
Okay, so I was just having a convo with my bro Wandering Winder here.
Right.
And we decided, hey, what are you doing for the next hour and 9 minutes? And we were
nailed
both like,
that time, by the way.
Yeah.
We did not re-edit this. Actually, we didn't, because we don't. This is like so much work.
It's actually weird because like when Jake and I record an episode, we're not really aiming for anything, but it's almost always an hour and 9 minutes long.
Really?
Yeah.
That's like when one time I was taking a bunch of like DVD cases out of the old, whatever you call a bookcase that's not for books but for DVD cases.
The Victrola, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I was taking a bunch of those out, and like the first 4 movies that I picked out were all within like 2 minutes of each other in runtime. It's like, well, apparently Hollywood says that 2 hours and 18 minutes is the perfect runtime of a movie.
Yeah. And it was. Those were all
but it's not anymore. Now it's 3 hours and 58 seconds.
Yeah, it's 2019. You gotta make them longer. Yeah, me too. So
we're gonna edit that
out. We'll see about that. So anyway, last time we talked about a kingdom. Our episode was on Minion, and Minion was in this kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And since the last episode, we played some games with that kingdom.
You might have seen them on Adam Horton's YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Adam Horton 01.
Nice! Yes! He nailed it.
Nailed it!
If you don't want to remember that, you can just go to adamhorton.com and there's links to all that stuff. But anyway, we have why don't we read the kingdom? You want to read the kingdom?
I do want to read the kingdom. We had the events, landmarks, and projects of advance. We had shelters. We had the kingdom cards: engineer, royal blacksmith, menagerie, armory, devil's workshop, catacombs, minion, wharf, altar, and peddler. Once more for our audio-only listeners, just to troll the person who really likes to have it in that order, I'm going to do it in reverse Ghost order. Peddler, altar, wharf, minion, catacombs, devil's workshop, armory, menagerie, royal blacksmith, engineer, with shelters, and advance. And I want to talk about, first thing here, there are a ton of really difficult decisions on this board that made basically no difference. And then there were also some difficult decisions which did make a difference. But like,
that's Dominion.
You draw your altar dead, but you have an extra buy. Do you advance altar into altar, or do you not?
Oh, the decisions.
It might make a difference in like 55 games out of a trillion, but
but it might only make a difference in 5.5 of those games.
It's true. It's true.
And that would
But there
just
were
be
other.
rough.
There were also like, if you don't get a 5-2, what action do you open with on your hand that you don't have? Let's say you have 4, and you don't have your necropolis. You like, do you buy
Oh
an
yeah.
armory or a menagerie or an engineer, or do you get a?
Uh,
Yeah, I don't think you get a devil's workshop. I
well,
think
that's
that
not an
one was
action
like
card.
that was like a clearer one. You got that one time, and I think that was less of a 5 in a billion chance and more of a like 5 in a
Why
couple
did you do
hundred
this?
chance that it made a difference. Not in the opening, but like a little bit later on,
Oh yeah.
like turn 4 or 5 or whatever.
Yeah, when all the cool kids are getting at D-Works. Yeah,
Right.
but it turns out it doesn't matter because you should just open with an action card because you're just gonna advance it.
Well, except like I think it does matter in
Oh,
rare cases. So like I was thinking about it, and I think I like getting Menagerie. And the reason I think I like Menagerie is there's some chance that it misses the shuffle. And if it misses the shuffle, I think I would rather have it be a Menagerie. But there was some argument for like Armory. And then if you get your Armory on turn 3, you can play it and advance the action you get the next turn, maybe. But there's also some argument for like you get the engineer because maybe you want to pop your engineer for 2 menageries. So like those all make like 0.55% difference probably between the best of those and the worst of those. But it's not exactly clear to me which of them is better. Well, and maybe the bigger difference than all of those, like Menagerie might run out at the end of the game. So it might be different first player to second player, whether you want to lower the pile on Menagerie or not.
yeah. Sure. I would say the menagerie seems fine, but like,
Again,
I don't think
I
it
think it's like
matters.
0.55% at most.
So I think the crunchiest part here is I had originally said that you want to open with an advance on the hand where you have Necropolis,
Yeah.
and you want to get an altar,
Yeah.
and I thought opening advance, even though Necropolis is the only village,
Yeah.
I just thought that opening with an advance was so good that you had to do it, and that means giving up on the dream of playing like a wharf and an altar on a turn or two
Right.
wharves
But
on a
also like
turn.
the plan after that was like empty the minions, right? It was like go straight for minions, empty the minions.
Yeah, so that's what I advocated for last episode, and
Right.
I still feel like that's the direction that I want to be going.
Really.
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple of different things that we tried, and I mean, just like all the rest of this stuff, I feel like how you draw affects things a lot more than
I
what
think
you.
how you draw definitely affects things a lot more, but it seemed to me from our games that like getting at least one wharf and eventually getting a couple wharfs was pretty important because like getting a lot
I
of
agree.
peddlers was pretty important. So I don't like going like straight for a bunch of minions. I don't think. I think you want to get a wharf early and then you go for minions.
I mean, I kind of like getting minions early on because it can potentially help you play your altar more often. I mean, I also think getting a wharf early ish is just fine.
But and then so the other thing that I came up with is like maybe you just skip the altar and get a wharf right away. 'Cause
Yeah, and
that didn't seem that much different to me than
yeah,
because it's like and it really seemed to depend to me on the draws. I think I still like getting the altar a little more and then just like not being too afraid to advance it into a second wharf for a minion fairly early once you start drawing it dead.
yeah.
But like I could see just going straight for the wharf maybe. I don't know. I think it's kind of close.
I do think it's kind of close.
I think
Uh,
draws matter a lot.
I think they do.
And then there's also one thing that we learned really, really clearly, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
having 2-5 or 5-2 is amazing because you get to
Oh, yeah.
open with a
You
five
learned that.
and advance. Well, I was very skilled and got that 3 times in a row.
Yeah. How do you get to be that skilled?
You
I want
make
to
your
be
own
skilled.
shuffle luck.
Oh yeah, that's right. I should have made that shuffle luck. That would have been pretty sweet.
Yeah. I guess there's some open question. Maybe you were getting to this when you talked about the crunchiness of like, do you actually advance that necro or do you keep it around? It wasn't 100% clear.
I thought. I mean, I just really don't like keeping it after playing a lot both ways.
I am like 80% confident with you, but like I think you could win some games keeping it around. And yeah, but like when you buy those provinces is another one of those things that's not clear to me. There were some times where it was like, I kind of have 10 or 11 in two buys. Do I want to get a couple minions? Do I? There's also like questions of like, I could get, I could, you know, like I could get a province and two peddlers, or I could get two minions and a peddler. And it's not exactly clear to me which of those is
Hmm.
better. I don't think the minions were that important.
I feel
You
like
had dwarf
greening
and stuff
early
going
is
on.
pretty good.
I think, yeah, it's you're not going to consistently double province. I think there were 2 or 3 turns across all those games where one of us did spike 16, but it's not
Yeah.
like it's not something you're going to count on.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone who ever did that won that game.
I think I won one of
I
those
don't I
games,
don't
but it
remember
didn't
it.
seem like
Whenever I did it,
particularly
I felt
important.
like yeah, whenever I did it, I felt like I was behind and it wasn't enough.
I felt like, well, it wasn't because when I remember hitting it, it wasn't because I built that way. It's because it just like
Yeah.
kind of fell in my lap. All my minions
Yeah.
were at the top of the shuffle,
Yeah.
so it worked out, and I was like, oh, that's 16,
Yeah.
huh? Who knew?
Yeah.
I think if you try to build to double, you're gonna be building way too long, and you're
Yeah.
still not gonna consistently double because it doesn't happen.
That's life. Yeah. So I think the big takeaway for me here is that Minion's a really good card,
Yeah,
and Wharf is also a really good card.
yeah,
And I had mentioned in the last episode that Minion doesn't really play nice with other sources of draw other
yeah.
than draw to X.
Right.
And I mean, Minion and Menagerie, there was a little bit of hashtag synergy there, and
Hashtag
that was
synergy.
that was pretty nice. On the other hand, it feels bad to put a Wharf in that deck,
I mean,
but
on the other
there,
hand, it feels great because it's a Wharf, and Wharf is a really good card.
yeah, like both Minion and Wharf are strong enough cards that like it kind of bends a lot
The
of
anti
rules.
synergy isn't that bad.
Right. So I was thinking about it, and first of all, Worf's extra buys with Peddler is really stinking good
That's
because
really
Minion would
important.
really like Peddlers here.
Yeah.
But also, I was thinking about it, and like if there was a card that just gave you a buy and then cards next turn, and it didn't draw you cards this turn, like
That
I
would
would.
be almost as good here.
Well, yeah, I would more strongly consider putting that in a Minion deck because the cards at the start of next turn is
Really?
great. You can
Even if it
kind of
costs
look at
5? You would consider that more strongly, even though it's a strictly worse card than Wharf?
Well, I mean, it would feel less bad because it doesn't break
It
that
doesn't have as
rule.
much anti synergy.
Yeah.
Hashtag anti synergy.
Yeah, and so like if you look at it that way, it's like, well, yeah, of course, Worf is a card that you want to put in that deck.
Yeah.
And that was for me mentally like how I got to the place of like, oh, this is how I justify putting Minion in a deck with another draw card because they're both stinking good. And Worf is so stinking good that if you nerf it, you can actually see the parts of it that don't butt heads with Minion and realize, oh wait, this is something that you do want, and your deck will be better for adding this card.
Right. And it might feel bad to draw your minions dead, but on the other hand, you just don't care that much because it's just a really good card.
You can just feel really good at the start of your next turn when you drew 2 extra cards, and maybe one of them was a minion, and you just
Yeah.
got more money because of that. Money's great.
Yeah.
So, did you have anything else to say about this kingdom?
I wanted to dedicate this episode.
Yeah.
That's not about this kingdom. It's about this episode. But I want to
Oh, yeah.
dedicate it
Yeah.
to all those people out there who don't go to adamhorton.com and don't post in the forums and don't post in the witch cord and don't email Adam and get it stuck in his spam filter and his email and get super annoying. Don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
They just sit and listen. Dedicating to you guys. All you lurkers, this episode's for you.
Oh, that was pretty good. I actually know of. I mean, there's one guy who
But please
runs.
comment. I mean, it's fine if you don't, but like,
There's
it's okay. You can talk. We don't bite too much.
There's one guy who I think he listens to this podcast while he runs, and he doesn't do any of that stuff, but he texts me.
Oh.
So yeah.
And it doesn't get caught by your anti-text spam filter?
No, he's a contact in my phone, and man, I'm about to switch my phone to only accept incoming calls or texts from numbers in my contacts list because I am so freaking tired.
Adam's phone number is 555.
It's on my website. I'm pretty sure you can find it if you.
Oh, I
if you
wouldn't have
just look.
advertised that.
I mean, if you want to text me about the podcast, you go ahead. If you want to spam me, I'll block your number. It's fine. Whatever.
Hashtag it's fine, whatever.
I'm already signed up for like every spam thing that exists. So I can't think of anything you could do to me that I haven't already done to myself. Wow, I'm sounding like Jake. Hey, this episode's about Lurker.
It is.
And why don't we read the text of that bad boy? Yeah. I'll do it. So Lurker is a 2-cost action. It's from the Intrigue expansion, but it's the second edition of Intrigue expansion. So it's not in the original Intrigue. You can get it for buying a second edition Intrigue, or you can get it in the update pack, but it's one of those new cards. I think there's 6 new cards for Intrigue second edition. Anyway, 2-cost action.
Big letter new?
What?
No.
Big
letter new.
No.
Which represents the frequency of a wave.
No, that's a different new.
Oh.
Sorry. So it's a 2-cost action, and it gives you +1 action, and then choose one. It says, trash an action card from the supply, or gain an action card from the trash. So I feel like the last episode and this episode have a theme. And remember, if you ignore a theme, you're just going to lose games.
The theme is non-terminal cards, which sometimes you want to put in your deck. And
I was going to say +1 action, then choose one.
And are from the Intrigue expansion?
No, that's not what I meant. So anyway, this card looks pretty innocent, right? And I feel like, it only costs 2, and that should kind of be a hint for how powerful it can be. After all, Chapel costs 2, and that was a hint that it's a pretty bad card, and that advice has stood the test of time.
Yeah, but on the other hand, Duchess costs 2, and that's an amazing card.
Yeah, but the artwork. We've talked about the artwork.
Yeah, you have this weird thing with the Duchess artwork. Let's talk about the Duchess artwork in the comments section.
I had this weird thing with a lot of the artwork. Remember Sea-Hag? Come on. Hey.
Of course, I made a comment about Sea-Hag. You might have missed that I slipped that in last week.
Hey, Sea-Hag. How you doing now, dear?
I said what you do in the privacy of your own home is between you and your wife and the Sea-Hag.
Oh, yeah. That's right. It was, we did some things in the privacy of my own home. So, yeah, Lurker.
Yeah. Lurker.
Gains cards.
It gains cards. It trashes cards. They have to be action cards.
Yeah, man.
Except when they don't.
Wait, what?
We'll get to that later.
What are you talking about?
We'll get to that later.
No, we won't, because it's not a thing.
It can indirectly gain non-action cards. Dang it. Hashtag catacombs combo.
Okay, great. So anyway, this thing gains cards, and I think the unique thing about Lurker is that it's one of the only gainers in the game that does not have a cost restriction on the cards that it gains. So despite the fact that it can only directly gain action cards, it can gain whatever action card you want, and if it gains Poorhouse that only costs 1...
Has to be in the trash.
Sure, but I'm saying if it gains a Poorhouse and only costs 1, Lurker don't care if it only costs 1 versus if it gained, I don't know, a Possession or something that costs a lot more than 1.
Or like a Royal Blacksmith or a Grand Market, which you couldn't buy because you have coppers. Or whatever. Like really hard to gain garbage.
Yeah, so I would say that Lurker is probably at its best when you're going to be gaining those super expensive things.
I think that's when it's at its second best.
Oh.
I think when it's at its best is something we'll cover later when it has a Super Mondo combo.
Oh, yeah, of course. But also, I mean, that Mondo combo does kind of fit. So, like, I mean, I think it's at its best when you're gaining the potion cost cards, or the cards, those 8 debt cards, or the
7
the
cards
expensive,
sometimes.
the king's courts and the grand markets of the world.
Yeah.
And I think that Lurker can be so good in those cases that it can provide you kind of a new build path towards building a deck that uses those really expensive cards.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. That is, barring weird shenanigans, which are obviously the best, not in terms of strength, but in terms of fun part of the card, the weird shenanigans, because weird shenanigans are great. Hashtag edgecased with Wandering Winder.
Seriously, if you don't like weird shenanigans, why are you listening to a Dominion podcast?
A Dominion podcast.
That's like why Dominion is fun, is weird shenanigans.
Should we rename our podcast Weird Shenanigans?
Welcome to Making Luck, a weird shenanigans podcast.
Welcome to Weird Shenanigans.
A Making Luck podcast?
Anyway, weird shenanigans are great, but the normal, quote unquote, normal use case of Lurker, I agree. That's the best part of the normal, is like your 7 costs, your potion cost stuff, especially the expensive potion cost stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Your 8 debt things. I think that's kind of the normal base case. And like, so I want to talk about, let's just say it's a random board, normal board with Lurker, and like there's a 5 cost action that you really want.
A normal board.
I could open Lurker and use the Lurker to get me that 5 cost action. Is that a good idea, Adam?
Well, obviously that depends, but if I'm looking at 5 cost actions, and I'm looking at my Lurker-o-meter, I'm thinking about a different card that helps me get 5 cost actions, and it's a really good card.
The other Lurker?
No, I was thinking about Silver.
Oh, Silver. Oh.
Yeah.
But Silver doesn't say gain on it.
Did you know, actually, that Silver is a really good card?
Is it? But Silver,
it definitely
Silver doesn't say that you can gain a card on it. Lurker does.
Cool. So
is there some other mechanic in the game that lets you gain cards?
Well, I mean, the one that Silver helps you, I mean, there are a lot of them, but the one that Silver helps you with is buying cards.
Oh, you can buy cards.
Almost always results in immediately gaining the card.
Oh, but what if there's a blue dog walking left on a Sunday across a lazy river from a red fox?
Actually, that usually doesn't have much to do with buying and gaining cards. I was thinking about Trader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that what I said?
Yes, that's exactly what you said.
Oh, great.
Yeah. It's right back there on the podcast. I'll take a re-listen. I'm sure it makes all the sense in the world.
So I guess the point I want to make is opening Lurker usually sucks. That's all I'm really trying to say here.
Okay. Thanks for sharing.
But seriously, it sounds like I'm joking, but I think it's really easy to get overcome with this, like, Lurker being really good because it can gain me this stuff. And like, if I'm just trying to gain a 5 cost or even a 6 cost, usually you just want to try to buy it. It's going to be faster and it's going to be more reliable than trying to lurk into it.
Yeah, so more reliable lurking into it. The fact that the trash is shared by all of the players makes Lurker a whole lot worse.
Yeah.
Because, like, if Lurker put the action cards you trash in your own personal trash and that no one had access to them, like, I could play 2 non-terminals and gain whatever I want. That would be really busted.
It would be a lot better than it is. I just don't know if it would be super busted normally. Sure. But, like,
it's
if there is that, like, King's Court board or whatever, then, yeah, it's a lot better, obviously.
For sure. And so I think, I mean, the shared trash makes it a big drawback. And I think that, I mean, the fact that you don't want to end your turn leaving something juicy in the trash for your opponent or opponents, if they can at least threaten to play a Lurker before you get a chance to get that thing back.
So, like, I want to talk a little bit about this dynamic. There's, like, the double Lurker opening, which I think is kind of countered by the single Lurker opening. So
It
like
can be, yeah.
if you open 2 lurkers and I open 1 lurker, and you don't draw your 2 lurkers together, which you usually won't, like 30 something percent of the time it'll work out and you could just like play both of them on the same turn and be very happy, right?
Mm.
But 60 something percent of the time you're going to be sad because you're going to be looking at this lurker on like turn 3 and you're going to be like, well, I could play this lurker and trash a really good thing, but then there's a pretty good chance my opponent can play their lurker, 5 out of 12 or whatever, maybe more. That they could play their lurker and then they can gain the thing and then I'm behind, like I haven't done anything and they've been able to gain a good card and they haven't done much work and I've done all this work and they got the benefit. It feels really bad because they didn't do anything, Adam,
I hate smugglers.
and it wasn't even terminal.
Yeah, I know. It feels so bad. It's like you're looking at that lurker in your hand and you can't play it.
And a lot of times you shouldn't play it. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes, like, if you've gotten to this spot, it's maybe you just kind of like have to bite the bullet and be like, I hope they don't have it.
Yeah, just hashtag YOLO it.
Um,
Oh man, I gotta
Otherwise,
tell
like,
you,
you're just
th-
so far behind.
there was one time I did open double lurker, and my opponent did not open with any lurkers. And
Right.
so on either turn 3 or turn 4, I saw a lurker, and I was like, "Great, I'm gonna put something
And
in the
then
trash that I want."
and
And
then
then
your
my
other one missed
lurker,
the shuffle, and
and
then
they
they
and
bought a
they
lurker, and they saw their lurker first, and they gained it anyway first.
so salty.
Yeah, I've had that happen.
It's
Feels
like
great.
it's it's the worst. It
It is
feels
the worst. It's
terrible.
pretty bad. It's almost like
It's
getting your
awful.
sea hagged.
It's similar to getting your sea hag, yeah, yeah.
But with less purple and pink and hairbands and hair.
Yeah, and more like light blue, grayish kind of tones with a hood, and is that an eye patch?
In the hood.
Is that yeah, that is an eye
Um,
patch, and like a dagger. We'll say
but
that
the
dagger's
point
probably
is,
Valyrian steel.
like,
Yes.
if you see that, it kind of means that like because your opponent's only gotten 1 lurker. Well, you have the 2 lurkers, and it's very likely that the lurker's kind of sitting in your deck doing nothing for you, taking up card spots, reducing your money density, making it harder for you to buy stuff, like all of these bad things, right? And your opponent has the same thing because they have a lurker, but you have 2. They only have 1. They presumably got a useful card with their other opening buy. So, like, I think you're pretty behind in that case, usually.
I would say so. I mean, I really don't like opening cards that aren't going to do anything for me on turn 3 and turn 4.
Right.
And there's a very good chance that when you open Lurker, that's going to happen.
So,
So don't do that,
but
right?
then the alternative is you only get 1 lurker, right? So let's talk about the single lurker, and then if my opponent only gets a single lurker, then they're not ahead of me because we each have 1 lurker. And if they don't get a lurker, then I have this lurker, and I can go on this slow lurker plan.
Hashtag slow Lurker plan.
But the slow lurker plan, and you might have guessed this from the first word of the plan's name, it's slow.
Oh, no, hold on. I don't believe you. Please explain in more
So,
detail.
like, let's assume that, like you usually will, you're going to draw your lurker on turn 3 or turn 4, right? So you
Okay.
play your lurker and you trash a thing, and it's pretty safe because your opponent hasn't gotten a lurker, so you're okay. And let's say they continue to not get a lurker because why would they? It's a bad card. And
Cost 2.
and I mean, so this is like the other extreme, right? So you play your lurker, and then on turn 5 or turn 6, if you're lucky, you can draw your lurker again. Now you can gain the card, and then on turn 7 or turn 8, you can play it.
Cool.
Great. So, like, if the card was like a King's Court or a Forge or a Grand Market, then you're probably playing it earlier than if you were just trying to buy it. But if it's something that costs 5 or even most things that cost like 6, you're just slower. And you have this lurker in your deck that might be useful
Hope
later.
you wanted that.
but
LOL.
Might be a lot worse than like whatever other payload card you could have gotten. So this is all a long way of saying that I think in most cases, if there's not some synergy, we'll talk about the like on trash or various synergies that might make this better. But I think in general, Lurker's a pretty bad card to open.
Sure. So I think I mean, let's try and find situations where we would consider opening Lurker in light of all of this stuff that's
Hashtag Mondo
pulling us away from
combos.
there. Without the hashtag Mondo
Hashtag
combos.
mild combos. Hashtag synergy.
Well, I mean, there's those. Let's say we don't have those. What am
Okay.
I looking for? So the first thing I'm looking for, we talked about the super expensive stuff, and in some
Yeah.
cases like that, let's say that the thinning is forge or something that's 6 or 7,
Right.
and I don't want to put treasures in my deck or whatever. I would rather have the lurker to gain lots of stuff. Then I would consider opening with the lurkers and just if I would open double lurker in that case, which is not great, but I would probably want to follow that up with more lurkers.
Unless you
On
get like super lucky on turn 3 and wake up with all your dreams come true.
Sure. So let's say I want to give myself the chance to high roll and hit the 2 lurkers together and get the forge in my deck, and be happy that way. And maybe also lurker is something that I wanted for the future. It's really great for me to have a couple lurkers around.
I
Then
think
I would maybe consider that, even though it's super not great, but it could be better than other alternative options of building.
the other thing that helps a lot is basically I think what you usually want with Lurker if you're playing it this fair way is not the store fairway, but just and not the golf thing fairway, but like a fair
Yeah.
manner in which you know what I'm talking about.
Not like the project, but yeah.
What? Oh. Oh, like
Project
Project
Fair.
Fair. I thought you were saying
Yeah.
there was a project called Fairway, and I'm like, Adam, you're gonna have to edit that out.
Yeah, I definitely do need to edit that out. For sure.
Anyway, if you're playing it in a manner which is not quote unquote broken, which is just like a normal quote unquote fair
Yeah.
quote unquote quote unquote,
Like a normal game.
you know, a
Just
normal
gonna
guy
play
who uses
normal.
air
Just
quotes all
open
the time, like
Moneylender
London
and
Lender.
get Festival on 5 and buy provinces. Yeah,
Anyway,
just play
my
normal.
point is, bureaucrats OP. Uh, the if you can if there's some way that you can get the lurkers to line up on the same turn more often than just by like I bought some,
Nice.
then it gets a lot better. So like when you
Yeah.
get to drawing your deck, it gets a lot better. If you can thin a lot very fast, like you open lurker and then you donate, like
Oh.
right,
Wow.
or you open chapel and then you're gonna want lurkers, so you just get the first lurker, so you get the second one
Yeah.
in your next shuffle, whatever. Like you're gonna be super thin. You're gonna be playing all your lurkers every turn,
So
or
yeah, that
it's a bit
alternate.
better like with City Gate because you can, if you have a lurker, you can stick it back for next turn and then get them to line up more, right? So
Boom.
there's a few ways you can get them to line up. I still don't think I'd usually open it, at least not without also having um, like some really expensive thing that I want. But that is the kind of thing that helps Lurker out a lot.
Yeah, there's that build path where either the thinning is super expensive and you need Lurker to help you
to get
gain the
there,
thinning,
yeah,
or you're opening with the thinning and you're thinking about what to get with your other buy, and it's like, well,
the next things I
it's
want are going to be Lurkers, so I might as well get one now.
yeah, and so like you're willing to take the hit of, oh, I will open with this card that doesn't do anything for me immediately because the success of my next few turns is measured by number one, can I play the card that thins?
Right,
And then barring that, can I hit 2 for another lurker?
right.
And
But
lurker certainly doesn't hurt you by
but in
opening
terms of opening, it's
indefinitely.
still usually like really, really good thinning because otherwise, it's still you usually want to get more of your other deck control up first before you add what is effectively payload, which is Lurker. That's what it is. It's payload.
Right. So I guess we're looking
Like
at chapel, cathedral level
I'm
stuff,
not
like
even
maybe
sure
remake or
about
steward.
Cathedral. Like maybe Cathedral. I don't. It's very rare. I think it's mostly Chapel and maybe Donate. Maybe.
Okay.
But
That
like
seems reasonable to me.
sometimes there's something better to do with Donate anyway. Yeah. And then barring that, I'm usually not opening Lurker unless A, I'm getting one copy because my opponent's already gotten two. Right. That's
Mm,
one. That's one reason you might get a Lurker.
yeah.
Or two, um, I might open Lurker if there's one of these synergies going on. So maybe we should talk
Yeah.
about these synergies.
Let's talk about hashtag synergies. I'm looking at a couple of different styles of synergies, and I
Yeah,
think a lot of them revolve on cards that like to be trashed.
right.
So, top of the list in my book is Cultist.
Really? That's the top of the list. That's not the top of the list for me.
Okay, I'm leaving Hunting Grounds to the end.
Okay.
So, do you want to talk about Lurker Hunting Grounds now?
Yes.
Okay,
Because I
it's
think it
really
should be at the
stinking
top
good.
of the list.
Okay, sure, it's really stinking good.
It's really, really stinking good.
So, I have this definition of a combo, and the combo in my mind, yeah, in my mind, a combo is you have these rules of building a good deck in Dominion, and a combo deck is something that breaks those rules because it's so powerful, and also should be 2 cards only, so that it maybe has a chance of appearing. There are very few combo decks in my mind that are really top tier enough to just say, all right, everything's out the window, I'm playing a combo deck. So Lurker Hunting Grounds is certainly powerful enough to be on that top tier.
Yeah.
The
I don't know that I would define things equivalently to you, but it's certainly
Sure.
it's like one of the half dozen best 2-card combos, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So the idea is you're gonna empty piles, and
Mhm.
usually those piles are going to be Hunting Grounds and Duchy and Lurker,
Or
and
estates.
sometimes
Pretty often
estates.
estates.
Sometimes estates instead of duchies. It depends on how you're
I was
contested.
thinking estates instead of lurkers, but it depends how the game goes a little bit. That doesn't matter so much.
Estates are pretty rare. Um,
Really?
Yeah, well, there's 10 hunting grounds in the pile. So in a 2-player game, you're going to gain 8 duchies,
Right.
and then you're going
That's
to
6
have 2 more
estates.
gains for 6 estates. And
And
by
then you're
that
gonna
point,
buy 2 estates.
your deck has trouble hitting 2, but your lurkers don't have anything left to trash because all the hunting grounds are gone. So usually the lurkers
Mm,
run out first. Now in a mirror, the estates matter a little more, and they might be a
well,
little
I
more
was assuming
contested.
that you were gonna be mirrored, which is why I would think that the estates would run out more. Because I think if you don't mirror, the game's usually not close.
Sure. I mean, this thing is really powerful. Uncontested, it can almost always end the game by turn 10, even faster sometimes, and you'll
Yeah.
have 27 to 33 points, depending on how things go.
We should probably explain how the combo works in case you haven't figured it out. It's not the most intuitive thing because it doesn't work how the cards normal. I mean, it does what the cards say, but it's not like how you would normally use the cards. So
Yeah.
what you do is you on turn 1 you buy a lurker, and on turn 2 you buy a lurker, and on turn 3, 4, 5, and 6, and whatever turn for the next several turns you buy a lurker. But every time you play the lurker, every time you draw a lurker, you play it, and every time you play it, you trash a hunting grounds. And hunting grounds says when you trash hunting grounds, you either gain a duchy or 3 estates. So you gain a duchy. You do that 8 times, and then the duchies are all gone. So then you say, I'm going to gain 3 estates. Or at this point, you might just be like, I need to end the game. But you probably still gain the 3 estates because, hey, that's more points. So you can do this really fast because, like I said, turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. All these first 5, 6, 7 turns of the game, you're buying lurkers. So you're going to be able to play a lurker like most turns. Sometimes you're going to be able to play more than one lurker. And you're going to be gaining a duchy most turns. Sometimes you're going to gain more than one duchy. And then the piles are going to round out on, like, as Adam said, like turn 10. And you're going to have all these points. Unless your opponent's doing something really, really, really good, they
That's
can't
a
get
tall
like
order,
5
man.
provinces in 10 turns.
I mean, that's a really tall order. Just because this thing is so fast and gets so many points at the same time. If I'm gonna think about playing against the combo,
Yeah.
and I've decided, oh, I'm not gonna go for it myself. I guess the main avenues of counterplay I have are just a couple things. The first one is if you can get 3 hunting grounds before they can empty the duchies with them, then that player has a problem, right? Because they needed to empty duchies or estates, but
Mhm.
they don't have really any economy. Most of their economy comes from trashing the card from the supply. So if they don't have hunting grounds in the supply to trash, well, that's going to be an issue for them. Now, granted, they can just transition to estates, make sure the estates are empty, and you
Empty hunting
can't really.
grounds, estates, and lurkers.
Yeah, so they can just prioritize getting the estates empty and then get duchies with the rest of their hunting grounds. So you've slowed them down here, maybe like a turn. But this isn't
But
really all
unless
that
you were
great.
also being really fast, then okay, turn 11, and I went out of my way. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah. And also, hunting grounds is expensive, and you have to get 3 of them super fast. And by the
Right,
way, you can't use Lurker for that because that just helps your opponent.
right,
So this is a really tall order, and it doesn't do all that much.
right. I
And
think
that's about it. I mean,
the
other than
usual way,
Enchantress,
yeah,
there's really no way to stop this combo. Like, pretty
I
much every other attack just
think
does nothing.
basically you just have to be able to race it. You have to have like such an incredibly strong combination of several other cards that you can just get 5 provinces in 10 turns, which, like, it happens. I did it in a game last week,
Nice.
but like it's not very common.
Yeah, it takes a lot. I know a lot of
It takes a
people.
village.
Yeah, it takes.
It oftentimes does take a village because it's pretty hard to
Yeah,
get that many provinces without having some kind of
yeah,
village to play a lot of actions.
that's right, man. It takes a village. We did it, guys.
But sometimes it doesn't take a village. Sometimes it's just like, I'm gonna donate down to like hoard double gold. Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, something like that. No village. No village required.
Hashtag no village required.
Yeah, it's funny. Lurker Hunting Grounds is so fast and so potent that it tends to push out a lot of other types of interaction. We mentioned almost all of them, but like if I'm going for Lurker Hunting Grounds, it turns out that donate doesn't make it faster, which is kind of hilarious.
Right. Hashtag skip donate.
Yeah, the only thing that really helps it is Catacombs. Like it doesn't help it all that super much. It's just instead of trashing Hunting Grounds on turn 3 and turn 4, you trash Catacombs and
Trash
gain Lurkers.
Except maybe in the mirror that you already need to start
Right, yeah.
getting duchies
Yeah, in the mirror, points are just super important, so you
because
just dive
you're
for
just like
points.
getting them so fast because the game will be over on turn like 7 in the mirror or something absurd.
Yeah, and in the mirror, like you don't have to focus on ending the game as fast
You know, you need to score
because
points.
you just
Because
need to score points
if you have a
fast.
2 estate lead, you're like golden because they can never buy
Yeah,
province.
yeah.
And
I mean,
yeah,
if you buy 2 estates, as long as you don't lose the quote duchy split, and by
right,
duchy split, I mean trashing a hunting ground split because you get 3 points from
right,
trashing 10 hunting grounds.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
mean, so like buying a state is something you're thinking about doing on turn 4 or 5 in the mirror. You're like,
Yes.
is it time to buy a state? It might
Yeah.
anyway. It's a really strong combo.
It's
You should
real
go
good.
for it almost all the time.
Whenever you see those 2 cards, the combo lights should be going off in your head,
Yeah.
and the little siren and the swirly lights. It should be full disco party.
All right. But let's talk about other synergies which are strong, and some of them are really strong, but they're not like this is the whole game is this combo.
Yeah. So cultist. We
Yeah.
did it, guys.
So cultist turns your lurker into put a cultist from the supply into the trash, which your opponent can then gain with a lurker, which is not the best thing ever. But +1 action, draw 3 cards, which is the best thing ever.
It's super great. It's unfortunate that you have to be playing a cultist game in order to do this, but if you don't think about the rest of what cultist does, this can feel really good to do.
And it often still is really good. Like
Yeah.
drawing that many cards that fast non-terminally is really strong, but it's not a whole game plan. You need to figure out like, am I getting some kind of strong trashing because I can draw so many cards so fast? Maybe I don't have to do this stupid ruins thing that I have to do in every cultist game because
Oh, but you
like
do. Rip.
no, but sometimes you don't. Like sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get like 3 or 4 lurkers and then you get
Oh,
forge.
Vineyard.
You get a forge, and then when you trash, you get your deck so thin that like you just trash it every turn. Like
Yeah,
it's
man.
weird. It's weird. Sometimes you can
Cool.
get away around with it, but like oftentimes it's just. I think you're too down on the monolithic cultist thing. I think you trash more than you do, but whatever. That's a different episode.
Sure.
Point is, non-terminally drawing 3 cards is really good. And sometimes you're going to end up gaining cultists from the trash later or off your opponents. But like, if you just ignore the fact that you gotta draw 3 cards. Like, you should probably be doing both those things.
Sure.
Um,
I mean, if
yeah,
I'm ready to just do the spamming cultist stack,
yeah,
opening double lurker is a great way to get there because I can throw a cultist in the trash, and that helps me draw my other lurker and or
right,
hit 5 to buy cultists.
right.
So
You're
so it's a
usually gonna
great
do
way
one of
to
those 2 things.
it's a great way to transition into whatever deck you're going to build. Which in a cultist game,
Is often the
I mean,
cultist stack.
sure. Just be advised that this only works a finite number of times. So don't just like spam lurkers, just thinking that they're always going to do that
And
for
then
you. 'Cause-
get to the point where you're like, "Hey, why doesn't my deck do anything?
Oh no.
I guess I'm gonna
Well,
gain some
get some
cultists from the
lurkers.
trash way too late."
Yeah, probably can do better than just
Yeah.
mindlessly putting your blinders on and
So
buying
let's
a
talk
bunch of
about some
lurkers.
other synergies.
Yeah, sure.
Basically, like every card that says when you trash this is some kind of synergy with cultist or with
Yeah,
lurker, not with cultist, with lurker.
yeah.
Um, so let's go through a few of those. Like recently, we've had a couple more of them. Flag bearer, you can gain the flag without having to gain the flag bearer.
Boom.
It's pretty nice. Silk merchant, like you usually want to like gain a silk merchant, but being able to play your lurker as like this super squire is nice because like it's kind of like you got the extra action, but it's a villager, which is better, and it's kind of like you got the money, but it's a coffer, which is better. So like that's
It's
kind of
just
nice.
really good.
I mean, silk merchant's just a fantastic card anyway. Squire. Squire is situational because you need to have an attack you want to gain. But if there's an attack you want to gain, you could play one lurker and gain that attack by trashing the squire. That's pretty
I
hot.
I remember there was one time there was a familiar board, and I opened double watchtower, and my opponent opened with a potion, and they were like, "What are you doing? I'm going to destroy you. You can't defend against all the purples with the watchtowers." And
Hmm.
then turn 3, I bought a squire and I trashed it with the watchtower and I
And you
top decked the
top decked it with your
familiar.
other watchtower.
And with the same watchtower.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
then he resigned the game right away.
Yeah. So lurker is kind of like that.
Lurker's kind of like that. Yeah.
Right. Um, what else? There's fortress is really nice because
Oh yeah.
lurker reads plus an action, gain a fortress to your hand.
Yeah, so it's like a village, only every
Really
time you
good.
play it, you get
You
another village.
gain another village. Yeah.
It's super great.
And
Yeah.
until the fortresses are gone, and then you have some lurkers in your deck. But like,
You know.
still really good.
Yeah, it's
Um,
pretty decent.
rats is a really interesting one because usually
Hey Toby.
it's not really that like, oh, now I'm gonna be able to gain this rat. Like sometimes you gain the rats out of the trash, but it's
Or
more that
don't.
it makes it safe to open with the lurkers because if you get to that spot where you're like, crap, I opened a lurker, but they might have a lurker, so I shouldn't play my lurker because maybe they could gain the thing. You could just be like, I'm just gonna trash a rats, and it's like a cantrip. It's
Yeah,
fine.
it's nice to have that option.
And then when they do
Rats.
collide, you can be like, yes, I'm getting my grand market.
Yeah. So it's really nice to have that option. It takes away a lot of the opportunity cost of Lurker.
Yeah,
Because remember, a lot of the bad stuff we said about Lurker was, this isn't doing anything for you. And
right.
while a cantrip still isn't doing all that much for you, it's certainly a lot better than do nothing.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot better than that. It's definitely better than, oh, gee, I put this card in my deck that I don't want to play.
Yeah, that feels really bad.
Yeah. Speaking of not wanting to play, there is a comment I want to make, which is sometimes one of the considerations for whether you play your lurker or not is if you don't play your lurker, then your opponent doesn't know that you've seen your lurker.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
so if they're trying to figure out whether they should play their lurker, them thinking that you might have access to your lurker is good for you because it makes them less likely to YOLO go for it. So that's like a tie. I mean, it's not a huge thing, but it can be a tiebreaker to not play the lurker. And the only tiebreaker to play the lurker is like sometimes you're gonna like there's some terrible card on the board that you definitely neither of you want. So what's
Harvest.
Uh, man, we didn't even plan that.
Nice.
So there's like a harvest, and harvest will make either of your decks worse. So like you could trash the harvest from the supply, and if they gain it, joke's on them, it's worse than nothing.
Yeah,
Which
but like you
actually
just gotta.
oftentimes is not even worse than nothing, but sometimes it is. Harvest is one of the cards that's more likely to be worse than nothing. But even then, like the only way that's going to be relevant is if the harvest pile is going to run out, and that's probably not going to happen.
Well, I mean, if you really commit, it can. But I mean,
or if
I
there's like
feel
two.
like in order to make this work, though, you've really got to talk the harvest up. Like you've got to talk about how great it is and how much you want it while you're trashing it, because then you're gonna say, "Oh, I'm gonna trash a harvest because I want to put a harvest in my deck," and that's how you get them to snipe the harvest from you, right?
Or you probably do it a little more subtly. You're like, well, and you like act like you're hemming and hawing, like, should I play this or not? I don't know. They might be able to steal this. I guess I'm gonna go
Yeah.
for it anyway. I'm gonna trash a harvest.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I'm gonna
I
get you
got
because I
the
have a
harvest.
lurker. I'm gonna gain that heart. Or more realistically, there's Tomb on the board, and you just want to score a point.
Woo! I was gonna say, like, I mean, Warner, he mentioned a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And I think the one that comes up a lot is like, let's say your opponent is overcommitting to Lurker, and you're just gonna put like one Lurker in your deck so that you can constantly threaten to play the Lurker, right?
Right.
Threatening to play the Lurker, it gets a lot easier when you're thin, but you do often, when you're threatening to play a Lurker, it's a big deal to not actually play the Lurker.
Right, because then you're threatening to play the Lurker the next turn.
Yeah, so
Even if you
it's
haven't
like in chess, where the threat is worse than the execution, in a way.
Threat is oftentimes stronger than the execution.
Yeah. So
except when it isn't.
There were a lot of things that are hashtag edge case with Wandering Winder, but that one's actually a big deal if you're gonna do the whole only one Lurker to threaten to play Lurkers.
Right, like it needs to be an effective threat, and to be like if you're gonna reshuffle anyway, if you're like the last cards of a shuffle, then sure, go ahead, whatever. But if you're not, especially if you only got one Lurker, why did you get the one Lurker? It probably wasn't to trash a random card. It was probably to threaten gaining cards. And you don't want to give up the threat by like saying, "Oh, by the way, I can't play my Lurker next turn because I'm playing it now."
Yeah.
You want to have the threat because your opponent doesn't know. I mean, unless like your opponent has seen your hand or something and they know already.
Yeah. Play like a Crossroads or a Menagerie or something.
Hashtag edge case on that hashtag edge case.
Yeah.
Or like, they bureaucrated you and you didn't have a victory card.
Oh no. Disaster.
Or they cursed you and you didn't have a copper in hand.
Oh, pish posh.
Yeah. Or they played, what was the
Village?
Villain. They played Villain. And you didn't have any cards that cost more than 2 because you had a bunch of Lurkers. You had a Lurker and 4 coppers. Something like that.
Wait a second. Villain makes you discard 2 costs.
Oh.
That one doesn't work.
Because they played a highway before they played their Villain.
Oh, I was going to say you played a Will-O-Wisp to draw the Lurker.
Sure.
But you drew out the first draw, not the second, because that one gets revealed. So anyway, the last little tip I want to give here is when Lurker's in the game, when Lurkers are in people's decks, and you're calculating how to do a 3-pile, or like, I want to make sure my opponent can't 3-pile on me. Lurker, you just have to play one of them to put it in the trash.
Yeah.
And you can, if I have 3 Lurkers, I can trash 3 things from the supply just to empty piles, and I'm not required to gain them from the trash. So make sure you factor that into your calculations.
It's a big deal in games with Lurker once you get to like, especially once you get to drawing your deck, which is usually when Lurkers get to be better anyway. It totally messes up the math on the end game, and you can pile out from much higher, so that threat is much more real much sooner, and you have to adjust around that. So it definitely changes how that end game plays.
Yeah, actually, the last game
definitely be aware.
In the 2017 World Championships, I won that last game. I won that last game by doing exactly that with Lurker. I trashed like 2 or 3 nobles from the supply, and that was a 3rd pile. I won the game.
Yeah.
Nice.
So the pile control is a real big thing. But then there's like trash for benefit cards. So if I have an apprentice and I would usually not want to trash my other like nice, fancy, expensive actions. So like I don't want to apprentice my apprentice because I need those things and then they'll run out and I won't be able to draw anymore. But with Lurker, you can just like, yeah, I'm just gonna apprentice all my actions and then I can Lurker to regain them. So that's kind of nice. That's some upside.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and then the super edge case is like Emporium, a card that has an on gain benefit.
Woo!
And then I trashed it. And then I can gain it again and get that on gain benefit again. Maybe Border Village is probably a better example here. But like Emporium gives you infinite points. Whoa!
Well, you have to have a way to trash the Emporium
Emporium
again.
with a way to trash it and a Lurker is infinite points. Whoa! And a way to play at 5 cards and whoa!
Nice. I was gonna say maybe a little less edge casey, but I think Procession is a nice
Hashtag
little
less edge
synergy.
Casey with Adam Horton.
Yeah. I think Procession is a nice little thing because first of all,
Sure.
Lurker's a card that likes to be played twice, and so the Throne Room family is a nice family of synergies with it, and Procession fits there.
That's
But
true.
also, Procession puts some juicy stuff in the trash, which is something that Lurker really
It
likes.
often does that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a nice little synergy. I think Apprentice, in all honesty, Apprentice, of all the trash for benefit cards, I mean, all of them work this way to some extent, but Apprentice kind of really does. Like once you get thin and you might want to use Apprentice to draw, like it's there for you. Lurker helps that out. It's not like Game Breaker or anything, but it's a nice little bonus.
Yeah,
It's
it's
real.
similar to University in that regard. University Apprentice has
Yeah.
that same kind of synergy.
Yeah. I've had some weird things where like I really wanted to keep being able to get the Villa effect because I wanted like I had treasures in my deck and I wanted
Oh
to
yeah,
do like some like Villa whatever
Villa draw
thing,
to X. Yeah.
then it got to the point where it was like, you know what? My opponent's also doing this. I'm gonna run them out of villas. And then I had Lurker. And then I could like trash like I was like Jack and Villa or something. So like I trashed the Villa to my Jack so I could play the Lurker and regain the Villa and get extra actions that way because we were
Boom.
like action pinched. That was like super fancy and slightly better than not doing it.
Nice. You did it.
Hashtag
Man.
slightly better.
I'm proud of you, man. I need.
So anyway, there's like all kinds of little tiny things, but the big things are the on trash ones, really, and the pile control. And once you're drawing to where you can get multiple Lurkers together,
Yeah. Lurker.
it's a okay card.
It's a mediocre card.
It's a card you play sometimes.
Sometimes, as in this kingdom that we've selected.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Well, in order to become sure, perhaps I could read the cards.
Perhaps that would help.
Okay. So we've got Lurker, Vassal, Bridge, Rats, Silk Merchant, Workers Village, Catacombs, Patrol, Tragic Hero, Wine Merchant. We have Aqueduct, and also Shelters. Once more for our audio-only listeners. Lurker, Vassal, Bridge, Rats, Silk Merchant, Workers Village, Catacombs, Patrol, Tragic Hero, Wine Merchant, and we have Aqueduct and Shelters.
There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, I see the potential for some fireworks.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. I didn't even cover all the weak hashtag edge case with Wandering Winder combos of Lurker. And there's 2 cards on here that I didn't talk about, along with 2 cards that I did. There are so many weak synergies with Lurker here. So you have the Rats that we discussed. You have the Silk Merchant that we discussed. You have Catacombs, which we didn't directly talk about that, but we kind of
similar to
referenced it.
Fortress, yeah.
Right? Like you can trash the Catacombs and then gain a cheaper card, so you can use it to gain. It's not in hand, and it leaves this Catacombs in the trash, so your opponent can lurk into. So it's not as good as like the Fortress one, but it can be solid. And then there's also Tragic Hero. If you're drawing with Tragic Hero, a lot of times you run out of draw, and your Tragic Heroes go to the trash. Lurker, hey, that's a way for action cards to get in the trash without having to lurk them. So that's some mild synergy as well. There's no real thinning here.
Yeah, can't actually thin your deck. I mean, there's rats, and to be honest, I haven't completely written rats off, even though there's no way to trash the rats.
Yeah.
I haven't completely written it off, and here's why. So,
It combos with Vassal, so you can play Vassals and be sure to hit something because you can hit a rats.
so that's actually not nothing. I was thinking more along the lines of, so I think the goal of the deck is probably I want to play a lot of bridges. It seems like a cool deck you can build, and
Is
there is a lot of
it
draw to get you there.
is the point with rats that once you've both been playing Lurker so much and been trashing rats to just cantrip, and there's only like 2 rats left, then your rats kind of becomes like a bad upgrade?
Uh,
There's no more rats to gain?
I mean, I feel like the game's probably over if that
I
happened.
mean, the game is probably over, but like it's nice if somehow the game isn't over.
I was thinking that Workers Village could
Yeah,
be important because it's one stack of villages, and you need
that's true.
to play some draw cards that are terminal, require a village, and you also want to have some actions left over for that bridge. So I'm thinking about other ways to get actions, and I'm thinking about Lurker and Silk Merchant, which is great, and I think it's pretty good here.
Mhm.
I if I mean it's a way for me to get a villager token without spending an action to do it, and so that's probably something that I'm interested in doing. Blah, blah, blah. Silk Merchant,
Cirque du Soleil.
yeah, that too. Silk Merchant's not a bad card for the deck, and also gives you that villager when you gain it from the trash.
Silk Merchant's a great card for the deck.
So I imagine I'm going to be putting them in my deck, and sure, maybe I won't be too sad if I have to trash that to a rats.
And then you can
Also,
regain it with Lurker and get even more tokens.
it's not crazy. I haven't. I mean, it doesn't
I've
seem
heard
that super
stupider
great.
ideas from my own mouth
Yeah, I
during
mean,
this podcast.
I'm not I'm not positive that it's terrible. And also there are like a couple of turns after you have like maybe 3 or 4 rats in your deck where you actually effectively have less stop cards.
Right? Because you can cantrip and trash you're kind of sort of playing like an Oasis that doesn't give you money.
Kind of sort of, yeah, assuming that you are okay with trashing one of your starting cards and turning it into a rats permanently. So like this is not a permanent effect. But like all of that added together, I could actually see
I think you haven't
getting a
even
rat.
talked about the biggest point for rats here.
The artwork.
No. Toby
What
is
is it?
Toby is pretty cool, but I think the biggest point for rats is I think this game is extremely likely to end on piles, and given that that's the case, you might want the opportunity at some point to do the rats auto pile to give you the third pile because you only have access to 2. I think that's not nothing. I think that really might come up because
Interesting.
I think the deck that you want to build, you're going to probably get some lurkers, you're going to get workers villages, you're going to get silk merchants, you're going to get bridges. Cost on everything is going to be reduced by a bit. You're going to have a zillion buys, and so piles can run so fast.
I'm pretty sure I want to open with a lurker here.
You do? I'm pretty
Yes.
sure I want to open with a silk merchant here.
I'm thinking I'm between bridge and Cirque Merchant.
Cirque du Soleil.
I'm between bridge and silk merchant for my other buy,
Mhm.
and but I'm pretty sure that I want to get a lurker in my opening. Lurker can trash a catacombs and gain me a thing. It can trash a silk merchant directly and gain me a coffers and a villager if I decide I want that. Or it can just well, I mean that's all it's really going to be doing for me in the opening. It can trash a rats and cantrip itself, but that I'm never going to do that on turn 2
Yeah,
or turn
I'm
4.
really not sure like what the best order is, but I'm pretty sure that the deck that you want to build is going to be a lot of workers villages, a lot of silk merchants, at least a few bridges, maybe some other draw cards, probably some lurkers.
Yeah, that sounds
And then you're going to
about
say,
like the deck I
"Hey,
want
the
to build.
game's over. I should probably win.
That would be, yeah, that seems pretty good. Yeah.
I think I think I'd be closer on bridge if Necropolis weren't here. And I think that makes very little difference, but they're probably kind of close in terms of opening. I mean, you're going to get both anyway, eventually.
Yeah, I'm not decided 100%. I'm leaning towards bridge.
I think I
over
probably
Silk Merchant.
opened Silk Merchant.
I
Lurker.
think it's very close, and I could be wrong, and I could also see it not mattering all that much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably depends on how you draw. If you draw the Lurker in such a way that you have to spend your villager, then you're probably sad. And if you don't, you're probably happy. Maybe it depends on...
If I open Lurker Bridge, I
Yeah.
can't be forced to spend my villager.
No, I mean if you open the Silk Merchant.
But if you do Silk Merchant, yeah, you could be forced to do
Right.
that.
But I think like I would rather be drawing more if they don't have the case where I draw the Lurker, quote unquote, that's semi-dead or whatever.
I'm not really sold on drawing more all that much. I don't think it matters all that much, and
I want to
think
draw
that,
so much. I think that drawing more is more important. I think the reason why getting an early bridge is important is because you need to be jamming all these other cards in your deck so that you can draw more faster.
Well, yeah. So, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Was there anything else you had to say about this kingdom?
Patrol doesn't seem very relevant.
Yeah, or Tragic Hero, or Wine Merchant, or Aqueduct, hilariously.
I could see Tragic Hero because...
I don't see it.
Like, Catacombs is probably going to be easier and maybe better, but I could see Tragic Hero because, like, I really want those buys. And, like, extra buys. I see extra buys, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe. Maybe one day, Jordy, I'll put this chip in my brain and I'll laugh at your jokes.
Yeah. Life forms.
Then, like, it looked completely different, but Data didn't notice, and Jordy didn't notice either.
Yeah. And, you know, hashtag no harm, no foul.
Hashtag no harm, no foul.
Yeah. So, anyway, if you have some comments on this kingdom, or maybe anything else on the podcast, if you're listening on YouTube, you can leave a comment in the comments section. And
you could ask whether it's sexist that we call it a kingdom and not a queendom. And I don't mean about Dominion in general. I mean about, like, just life. Like,
just the language, yeah.
It's the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but they don't have a king. They have a queen. Shouldn't it be the United Queendom?
Yeah, should be.
Don't at
Hashtag me too.
Don't at me.
Okay. But if you're not listening on YouTube, you can just go to adamhorton.com, and there are links to all sorts of stuff there. Contact information, forums, Discord. We'd like to hear from you. It's likely that Jake will be back next week to do an episode of the show, but I don't know. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But in any case, I wanted to... Yeah. But in any case, I did want to thank you, Wandering Winder, for, like, you know, doing the podcast while Jake was off gallivanting around, or I don't know.
Oh, well, I wanted to thank you, Adam Horton, for asking me to do the podcast while Jake was off gallivanting around, or whatever it is he's doing.
Prancing through the meadow, yeah.
Like Little Bunny Foo-Foo?
Yeah.
Is that the word?
Yeah. Little Bunny Foo-Foo.
Them on the head.
Yeah. So he was picking up field mice and bopping them on the head, and we are doing a podcast, and hopefully you enjoyed the podcast and can play with Lurker better. Yeah, so, yeah, that's it.
Call your local SPCA.
Please.
Just to chat.
Get your Pat Spader new.
They don't get mad at you, and they're not like, you go, I need some time apart. Nah, there's always there. And they're just like, they're ready for you whenever you need them, and they're great.
Yeah. I was just going to say that too. Hey.
You're recording this, right?
I got the last half of that, yeah.
Yeah, pillows are awesome. How
Yeah,
are
man.
you?